Hello, everybody. I believe we are now live in all the right places. Isn't that a song? Going live in all the right places, something like that. Yeah, we are live. We're up and we're live. Beautiful. All right. Hi, everybody. So my name is David Paskin, your Torah Tech Guy, and I have the most amazing friends with me here. And welcome to Synagogue Tech Forum, where we come together. I know there's some background noise. I apologize for that. That'll stop soon. Where we come together to address ideas, topics, challenges, exciting new opportunities that all of us are now dealing with in our faith communities. We are a sister program to the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum, and Marty is here to represent the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum. And today we're actually going to talk about the proximity priority and how challenging it can be on both a technical level and a personal level to really do multi-access or hybrid well. Before we do that, I want to invite my friends to say hello real quick. So let's go around. Marty, Michael, and Tobias. Go for it.
All right. I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm the host of the Hybrid Ministries Tech Forum, along with some of my co-hosts here, as a matter of fact, and panelists. And that's on Thursday nights on 7 p.m. Eastern time. But I am an engineer of all sorts and all-around nice guy.
All around nice guy. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Michael, say hi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Kyer, and I've been streaming with my church since the beginning of quarantine. And now I'm doing some streaming work over on Twitch and basically streaming a lot. So I'm really glad to be here and kind of put in my 2 bits where I can.
We're all just 2 bits. Hi, everyone. I'm Tobias Moss. I'm a rabbi in Minneapolis at Temple Israel here, a large Reform synagogue, and have been diving into this topic through these different forums that we have. So nice to be here.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. So friends, what is the proximity priority? So I raised the question of how to do this well. And then Marty immediately said, oh, we call that the proximity priority, which I didn't know was a thing. I then did some research. I found out in the business world, we'll talk about this in a moment, they call it the proximity bias. But Marty, tell us a little bit about where did that come from? Where have you heard that? Where did you get it from?
I heard that from a group of engineers that we get together every day and talk about various issues for streaming and media production. It's called Office Hours. It's actually what inspired most of us to do what we're doing here. And so, let me ask you a question, panelists and everybody at home as well. You're in a meeting, very much like this, and it's your turn to talk. And how many times do you find yourself looking at the screen to see a person that you can address instead of looking at the camera? Right? That's the proximity priority, is that you will, hundreds of millennia of evolution have taught us as people, and particularly as presenters on a stage, to look at a person and make eye contact when you're talking and addressing to someone. The problem is that when you're on camera, the camera is the person you're addressing, is the audience you're addressing, is the hundreds of millions of people you're addressing. And that's where you need to focus your attention in order to create that eye contact with the audience, to bring them in to what you're saying and to engage with them, right? To look at your computer screen, it's nothing but your computer screen. And when, I'll bet that you have a very different impression of me and what I'm saying right now and right now.
Right. So you've actually raised sort of 2 different pieces. One is the importance of eye contact, and even when it's uncomfortable looking into a camera or into a screen, absolutely. That is compounded a gazillion times when there are, as you said, when there are human beings in the room And our natural instincts, our biology, our chemistry tells us pay attention to those folks that are in the room. Let me just bring in, so I was doing some research on this, the proximity bias. This is from ringcentral.com. There are articles about this all over the place. For all its benefits, hybrid work has the potential to create new chasms, particularly between those who work remotely on a full-time basis and those who can work on-site regularly. In a nutshell, proximity bias means that employees with close proximity to their leaders are seen as better workers compared to remote employees. As a result, they're much more likely to receive promotions, raises, and other merit increases. Now, of course, yeah, go ahead, Tobias.
Well, that just we can circle back to this, but I think there's a real proximity bias in how clergy view congregants, and that the congregants that come into the room, you're thinking, oh, that could be the next board member, that could be someone who will volunteer at something, but that might not be the case. There might be people who are virtually tapping in that are just as viable as really contributing members of the community. So I think I didn't think of it until you framed it as bias, because I've been thinking about it from the clergy point of view. Just leading a service, we have this attachment to the in-person crew. But even when you think about how they might fold into the bigger membership, we definitely have this bias.
That's beautiful, right? You think about, you say to yourself, boy, these 20 people really made an effort to be here. They showed up. They got in their car, or they walked, or they did whatever. And we don't give that same credit to the folks who made the effort, albeit in a different way, to show up at home. And so, yeah, there may be a bias there. I think the way this, at least for me, the way this translates to churches, to synagogues, to mosques, to wherever, is what you were saying, is that it is, as a leader, I am going to be far more inclined to look at the human being sitting in the room than I am at, as Marty, as you said before, at a camera. And I'll tell you that just in my own synagogue, and I don't run services here, but in my own synagogue, I have constantly been reminding the rabbi, the cantor, acknowledge the people who are online, right? Even if you're uncomfortable looking at the camera, say something, because it is so important that we not lose ourselves in the folks that are in the room. Am I summing that up correctly, Marty? Would you?
Absolutely. Well, think about a sanctuary with 3 sections of seating, right? Pews, chairs, 3 center section, left section, right section. What if the rabbi or the cantor only looked at the people on the left side of the room?
That's
right?
Such a great way to frame this, Marty. That's fantastic. Yeah. Keep going. I love it.
And so, what are the people on the right side of the room going to think? Why he's not looking at me, talking at me. He's not engaging with me. And that's exactly what people at home, I mean, you can see this in any number of programs that you can watch on television. Watch a concert, right? The concert, the musicians are playing to the people in the room, and the cameras are out here. They're up here. They're looking down. They're looking, across. Very seldom are the artists actually looking into the camera. Occasionally, but not very often. And it's like you as a viewer are on the outside of the venue looking in, or you're up in the cheap seats, right, looking down. And you can hear it, and you can feel it because you're there. But if the camera had that same view as the people in the cheap seats, it's not engaging at all. It's just like, it's just playing in the background.
You know who you just made me think of is, Michael, I'm sorry, I'll come to you right after this. You made me think of Stephen Colbert, because he does, I think, an exceptional job of paying just as much attention to the people in the room as the people in the Zoom, as it were, on TV. And in fact, he uses the people in the room to enrich the experience of the people watching online digitally.
It's interesting you say that, because that's another example we use, not in a not in a worship context, but in any other web streaming program that we do, is when you watch late night talk shows in particular, but it can be recorded live sitcom or anything like that. The audience is not there as an audience for the show. The people who are performing are not performing to the audience. They are trained, drilled into them. You are performing for the cameras. The people in the room, they are props. They are observers, right? And so when you watch late night talk show like Stephen or any of the others, when they do the monologue, they're looking at the camera, right? 99% of the time. They may address the people in the room, they calling the camera to there are people here, and we're going to acknowledge that the people here, but for 99% of the show, they're talking to the camera.
Right.
Now,
And again, using
in a
the
worship
audience.
context that doesn't quite work the same way. So you have to split up your time, but like any other person in the room, like any other section, you could have 1,000 people behind that camera. You don't know if there's one person or 1,000 people.
Yeah. Michael, please jump in.
In addition to what we're talking about today with this, redefining in many ways what this whole new system is, it's also not just the audience that's online currently that's watching us right now. It's also the audience that's in the future, the audience that is going to catch this recording in 24 hours, in a week, in some portion of the future. Even acknowledging that group of people is also a hugely important piece of this, to bring them into what it is we're saying. So there's this, it sort of expands once we get into this, it continues to expand. How do we define who our audience is? Who are we speaking to?
Michael, that's amazing. I'm so glad you brought that up. I watch a gentleman named Doc Rock, who he's been on the Twit network a number of times, This Week in Tech, and he now works at Ecamm Live, which is the streaming software I use. And he's a streamer himself, and he will always say in his streams, if you're watching now, throw a comment down below, ask a question. And if you're not watching now, if you're watching us later, throw a comment below and we'll respond to that. And so on the one hand, think about your future audience, and this is something that we as Jewish institutions really, I'll just speak for myself. I need to do this much better. We need to be monitoring that social media so that when those future viewers do comment and do engage, that we're there to be with them. I'm actually, I have a show on Monday with Rabbi Adrienne Rubin, who wrote her, I forget if it was her PhD or her master's on metrics and social media metrics and how to analyze metrics and all this stuff. And we're going to talk about, how can synagogues and Jewish communities, really any community, do this better? Use metrics, use the different ways of engagement on social media to capture that future audience. I love that.
Yeah, there's also with that, I still have people coming up to me after a sermon, if it's a good one, and saying, "Oh, my niece should have heard what you have said. Is there any way to get the text?" So it's still not automatic for them. Like, oh, this is obviously live streamed. This is obviously recorded. Like we have to lead our congregants also to know that what we do in the moment is now something that it can be permanently accessed, and make that easy for them. And we do, we crop out the sermons and post them as their own videos on Facebook, but that's not enough. We have to teach our congregants that resource is now part of the norm.
And I would add to that, Tobias, and this is really off topic, but I'll just throw it in that a 20-minute sermon or even a 10-minute sermon is not ideal for social sharing, but a snippet, a 2-minute amazing snippet, even if it's not the full context, if it's something that can draw people into the full 10-minute or 20-minute video, putting that stuff out there, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, whatever, Snapchat, TikToks, that's another thing that we all need to get better with. So how what are some of the, I think for myself at least, I split this up into, again, the technical piece and then when I move my hands, I go out of focus. The technical piece and the person piece. Let's talk personal first. Now, Tobias, you are a pulpit rabbi. What are some of the, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you have any tools or tips for how can rabbis and cantors and leaders split their attention? How can we not just give our attention to those folks that are sitting in the pews in front of us?
Yeah, I have a few ideas there. One is just how important there is to have some feedback system from the Zoom. Or from a live stream. I'm more used to Zoom as a worship model, and that could be a few things. It could be having some kind of monitor on the bima, either out of view of the congregation or explicitly that the congregation knows it's there too, to recognize the number. It's helpful just to know whether it's a smaller number than usual or a bigger number than usual. Just to see the participant number helps that lizard brain know that there's people there, and also to see familiar faces. So that's kind of the visual monitor. I was wondering, one thing I was thinking about that relates to this conversation is, right, if I tell a joke, I don't get to hear any Zoom laughs, but I get to hear all the in-room laughs. And so that's going to re-bias me towards the people in the room. So I think kind of getting feedback loops from the Zoom is a big conversation. We could explore all the different ways to do that. But I think it's really important for keeping that just human bias in check once you feel interaction from the Zoom. The other things
I just want to interrupt you. That's a really interesting piece of the dilemma. Is it's not all about what can we give to our congregants at home, but it's what can they give to us that will encourage us to give back to, right? We always talk about the feedback loop as a terrible thing, but that feedback loop is actually pretty vital to that engagement piece. And I just want to, Christo, who's, oh, you can't see that, it's too small, I'm sorry. Christo, who is, and I can't zoom in, who watches a lot of my videos, I'll just read it to you. He says, when I lead services, I try to make an effort to also speak to those joining on Zoom to make them feel included. And it's challenging because I can't actually see or hear them. So there you go, right? It's challenging when we don't have that feedback. I interrupted you.
Yeah. So yeah, the feedback loop, I think maybe we can brainstorm more on that in a moment. The other things I want to mention is just that the beginning and the end and maybe the middle of whatever it is a time to just add to your checklist, connect with the virtual somehow. So that could be the beginning and end of a service, to in that welcoming moment and in that seeing people off moment to do that, but also I kind of have sometimes I've written it down and sometimes it's just a mental checklist of how I approach a sermon. Like, I know I'm not allowed, 3 is the max pre-programmed jokes in a sermon. Otherwise, I've jumped over into stand-up comic and I'm no longer a rabbi. And sometimes I'll even write additional jokes in brackets and I'll skip them if I've already used my joke counter and feel like it's enough already, or they're at my fingertips if I need them. Likewise, when I write a sermon, if it's all facts and figures, then I know I'm not hitting the story emotional part of things. So I kind of have these checks on my sermons. And now a new one can be, is there some way to explicitly mention the virtual community at some point in the sermon? And which can be, as we look around the sanctuary and see its symbols, as we look around our homes and see the symbols that are in our homes, just that kind of talk of knowing that not everyone is in the same context as you. Some people are in a different context, and to name that, I think is really effective at bridging the gap.
Beautiful. Should we talk about some tips and tools for that feedback loop, how we can get feedback? One of the things that I found with a number of clergy is that there are lots of ways to get feedback from folks who are watching. There's chat, there's obviously listening to their voices, there's comments. But every one of those options means more tech on the bima. It means an iPad on the bima, or it means, on the stage, or it means a TV in the sanctuary. And there's a hesitancy to bring more technology into these sacred spaces. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because we could have a whole discussion about that. But any thoughts on best practices for getting that feedback, audio, visual, or otherwise? Even if it's just, now that I said visual, I'm thinking being able to see the faces of people and using nonverbal feedback or thumbs up or this kind of a thing.
Yeah, there really isn't a way to get audio feedback from those people out there. And if you're not using Zoom, it's not even really possible to get video feedback because YouTube, for example, is just a one-way stream. It's a broadcast. At least with Zoom, you could put up a gallery view on an iPad on the bima or a TV in the back of the room or something. With YouTube, all you may be able to get is the number of people watching. If you look at that YouTube page, that YouTube stream, you'll get a number showing how many people are actually watching, and that's it. So getting that kind of feedback depends on the platform you're using and how much tech you're actually willing to put up. But another tip that you could, this is not feedback from the people watching, but it's feedback from the technology in the room from the cameras, is a tally light. So you may have 2 or 3 cameras in the room. Which one do you look at, right? So if you do have multiple cameras in the room, you really want to be able to know which camera is on at any given moment so that you can look at that camera. And the way to do that is with a tally light.
Yeah, so the tally light generally shows a red light if that's the one that's live. Some show a green light for preview, that's going to be the next camera probably. And actually, I didn't know of tally lights until in our conversations they came up as we had already purchased what PTZ cameras we were going to install. And thankfully, they have built-in tally lights. And so now we have that red light to look for. And that does make a big difference in knowing that the cameras are real. They're on and they're real.
What's interesting? I'm thinking about when we all get used to cameras in our sanctuaries. One of the things I love to do with children, we have a blessing in the morning that says, Pokeach Ivrim, thank you, God, for opening the eyes of the blind. And I talk about how, it doesn't literally mean that God's going to take someone who's blind and give them sight again, but that metaphorically, in some ways, we're all blind. And so I bring them into a room like the sanctuary that they've all been in dozens, if not hundreds of times. And I say, find something you've never seen before. And they all can find, there's a speck on the wall, there's a light over there. We become blind to things that we see over and over and over again. So if we think we're not paying attention to the cameras now, when they're new, just imagine when we're used to them in our sanctuaries. And so the idea of those tally lights or big signs that say, hey, Rabbi, look here, or, whatever it is, that could become really, really vital for helping us stay focused on both of those communities. Christo came back with just a comment just saying that he's fine with hiding his iPad on the pulpit, keeping it discreet, but I refuse to have my MacBook on there, even using my iPhone as pushing it. Yeah, the nice thing about an iPad is that it can sit flat and no one else has to see that you're actually using it. As soon as you start bringing a laptop up there, it gets a little messy. Sorry, Tobias, go ahead.
I also feel actually on that note that even though an iPad is larger than a phone, when someone sees a phone, they know you could be doing one of 10,000 things, and you could be doing one of 10,000 things on an iPad too, but it doesn't carry that distraction concern anyway. So there's been times where I needed to self-monitor the Zoom and have used my phone, and that feels icky. But using a bigger screen feels like people will know I'm doing something
Yeah.
intentional for the service.
Yeah. That's interesting. It's so much of this, the challenge of this is how do we give the perception? First of all, how do we, for real, stay in the moment, stay in the sanctity, stay in the holiness, right? Stay in the prayer, whatever that is. And how do we also make sure that we're giving the perception that we're doing that? Because sometimes staring at a camera, using our phone, using all this technology feels very antithetical to sacred experience, at least in the Jewish world. In the Christian world, I don't know. In big churches, they've always, well, it feels like they've always used lots of technology with lights and screens and everything. Is that the norm in smaller churches also, or is this, it's not?
No, I don't think so. It's in smaller churches. Well, they don't tend to use large technologies like stage lighting and lit backdrops and things like that. Primarily, well, for a couple of reasons. One is they don't have the funding resources for it, but they also like to keep the worship service more organic than that. I mean, megachurch style worship is a show. It's definitely a show. It's got all the elements of entertainment in it. The only difference is what's being said from the stage. Um, and smaller churches like to keep a more organic feel to them. So that's not to say that they don't want to look good. They do. They make efforts to look good. Lighting is important, right? Even if it's just white lighting, it's got to be the right intensity. It's got to be, got to cover the stage properly. It can't be too backlit. It can't be too hot in the front. Contrasts between what the in church the minister is wearing and the scene behind them, whether it be a wall or something else. Color contrast, lighting contrast, it's all important for the visual image. And then of course the sound quality is really important.
Yeah, can I jump in about the sound quality, especially for getting that connection? The first thing that I noticed, it was audio. That audio has got such a strength with this. It really overrides the video but in many ways. We were always, you're on mute. We can't hear you talk, or we can hear your dog barking. And the first thing when we started moving back into this combination hybrid, with some folks in the sanctuary and some folks online, was we heard a truck go by on the outside of the sanctuary, and it was a sound that we were all familiar with. We'd all heard just about every Sunday when we had been in there before, this truck go by. And it was the first time that I felt drawn into that video, and it was through the audio. And the audio just gets such a primacy in this format that I could feel myself be drawn in. Excuse me, I could feel myself be drawn in.
So now, are you saying that you were drawn into the sound of the truck, or that the sound of the truck drew you into the sanctuary?
The sound of the truck drew me into the sanctuary. It triggered that memory, that memory of that space. And so I think it's going to be the same in the other direction, that audio is going to bring the who are live in the sanctuary, bring them into that awareness of who's online by being able to hear who's online.
Well, it's interesting with the synagogue space sound, because in preparing for this kind of forum or like office hours, right, we're trying to get our voice to go straight into the mic with no reverberation in the room, just as pure a sound as possible. But when we capture sound from the sanctuary, we want to get a clear sound, but we want to have the big reverb and echo of a big space that is part of what adds to the majesty of music there, of a sermon, with the sound banging around the room. So getting that sonic signature of a room is important. Before I just want to practice what we preach and welcome I see in our attendees, David and Mark are here. So great to have you here. And if you want to be up to a panelist, you can always raise your hand or submit any questions. Glad to have you. Looked like Marty was about to say something.
I didn't want to get too far off topic, in what we're talking about today. But since we are on the subject of sound, and sound definitely contributes to the viewing experience, right? As Tobias is saying, and Michael is saying, you want to be able to control that ratio between the direct sound and the reverberation sound of the room. And you also want to be able to capture sound of the congregants, during prayer, during congregational song. And, there are a small number of ways, but you have choice in how you can accomplish that. But you do want to pay particular attention to making the speech as highly intelligible as possible, which generally speaking means eliminating as much of the room reverberation and reflections as possible, at least through that one microphone.
But Marty, it's when you talked about making sure that the community is also heard in the Zoom, that if the community is sort of like your in studio audience, and they can contribute to the experience that the folks at home have, and the folks who are watching on Zoom or YouTube or wherever can be enriched by the experience, that vice versa. If it's okay, I want to show you a really brief video clip. I've used this in the past. So I've talked about how, when we're serving our roomers and our Zoomers, we want everyone to feel welcome, seen, heard, engaged. So this is a really short video clip of Rabbi David Ingber. And this, I think, is from maybe 2 summers ago. It's a service where it's a bar mitzvah. I think he's got a few people on site. He's got a few people online. And I think the way that he handles this is just beautiful and brilliant. And maybe we can unpack it afterwards. So
Let's go to the videotape.
Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos is another way of saying it. Good Shabbos.
In person, Shabbat Shalom.
In person, on site. Here we are. Yes, here we are. Not going back. Here we are. Amen, that we shouldn't go back. But also, there you are in the Zoom Synagogue. We are so happy that you're here. Some of you are waving your hands like Jeremy and Lauren up where you are. I see some other hands. There's some Ilana Klugman and Dave. Oh, look at this. There's a whole online wave going on. And just notice that you're also extending into the other person's, right? Unless you're Sandra, you're doing like the whole, this is the windshield wiper. I love it. There you go. That one. Love that one. Then you had like David Willinger is doing the whole Qigong thing. He's kind of got his Tai Chi thing going. I like that. I want to Zuma. David Siegman is giving us a priestly blessing. I love that. So we got all kinds of hand movements. Some of you in the Synagogue also are here for the first time. We know a lot of you are not. So we're so blessed that you keep coming back. As usual, this community is the sum total of all of its participants, all of the ones who come and who participate, make this the grand project of lifting our hearts and reminding ourselves as often as possible of the blessings that we have and the blessings that still await our own work in the world.
So I hope you're able to hear that okay. I keep using that clip because I think it's so powerful. And I just want to point out a couple of things that jump out at me, and then I'd love to hear what you think. So for me, of course, he looks at the camera. He's noticing people's movements and calling them by name. And then he's turning what they're doing into part of the prayer and spiritual experience, how they're reaching across the boxes to one another, how they're doing chungi or whatever, Tai Chi, right? Giving the priestly blessing. he goes on in this video to have everybody in the room introduce themselves into the microphone so that people on Zoom can hear, and then people on Zoom to introduce themselves. And it also looks like he's got one monitor off to the side and maybe a monitor in the back, certainly the cameras in the back. I just think it's such a beautiful example of what could be. I'm curious if any of you have any thoughts or responses.
I found it really engaging. I mean, I thought he was live and talking to me, right? And so it was obvious that he was seeing a monitor with a Zoom gallery, right? And it was either large enough or close enough that he could read the names. So if it's 80 feet back in the room, it'd be really hard to read the names. So that was important.
Or better yet, Marty,
Yeah.
it's entirely likely that he just knows the names of those folks because those are his
true.
congregants,
Yes.
right? Now so that would not be me. I never remember names, so I thank God for Zoom, right, with the names. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. Yes, and the way he utilized the people to bring them into part of the experience, to part of the service, I thought it was beautiful.
There's definitely a clergy skill, which is how much can you respond to the room, which even forgetting hybrid, when a baby starts crying, can you scoop that up into your sermon, or does it throw you off, or do you just ignore it? And there's times to go with any of those three approaches, but definitely certain clergy are more capable at making that swoop into what they're trying to accomplish. And so I know Rabbi Ingber would probably be one who's really good at that when it's just the room. And now we're seeing that come out involving the Zoom too. And I mean, it's to no fault of their own. I know other clergy who are less improvisational in nature than Rabbi Ingber is known to be, improvising prayers and other things too. So I love what he did, and I love and awakening people to that as a possibility, but also know that's not everyone's going to be able to just naturally find the freeness to do that. So I think there's like a mindset thing, and then there's also there's real skill and awareness involved.
Tobias, the improvisation that you just spoke of, that's fascinating to me. Because it feels like, I think a lot of us have been feeling like we've been improvising for the past 2 years. And in this space, when you're having to juggle two different audiences, if you will, or parts of your communities in two different physical spaces or two different types of spaces, it feels like some skill and improvisation is absolutely necessary. Do you think that I mean, maybe we need to start teaching this in rabbinical schools and to rabbis, to pastors. Marty, sorry, you wanted to.
No, improv classes. That should be required. Getting up for anybody who gets up on a stage and addresses people in a speech and a talk and a service as a minister. I mean, even off stage, the ability to do improvisational conversation, right, is so valuable. And you can take, improv classes are available. Find a community theater, right, and ask about improv classes. By the way, Synagogue, I loved it.
Yeah, isn't that great? I also want to say, by the way, that it's not just improvisation; it's also awareness and paying attention. Now, granted, I only lead in a digital space, so I don't have human beings in my physical space. But I'll tell you that I spend an inordinate amount of time when I probably should be focusing on my prayers, looking at the people that I'm praying with so that I can respond to them in real time. Oh, Judy, I love how you just put your talit over your head. Whatever I see, or if this often happens when a young child will run into mommy, and I'll stop everything I'm doing. Who is that beautiful baby? I want to see. those little pieces, that ability to not only improvise, but be that deep awareness and really paying attention. We even do it here. Tobias, you did it before when you said, you said something like, I think Marty wanted to say something. While you were speaking, you were paying close attention to everybody else and looking for those visual cues. So as leaders in this space, being able to look for those visual cues, and I would hope that this is one of the skills that we will take from the Synagogue. Christo loves that. That we'll take from the Synagogue and bring into our synagogues, because I would argue that we don't spend enough time when we're on site paying attention to the physical and other cues that we get from human beings and really being responsive. Sorry, Tobias, go ahead.
Well, I totally agree. And I think that a person's ability to multitask is limited. And so that's why anything that can be taken off the clergy hands needs to be. And we've lost that in bridging this gap right now, where I'm still hearing from some clergy who are advancing the slides during the service, or handling some Zoom function, or writing their own audio levels, or like anything that can be taken off the clergy hands needs to be, so that way they can get back to the service itself, awareness of the room and the Zoom, and not split their attention into 1,000 tiny pieces.
Yeah, Tobias, I want to jump and follow up on that. One of the things I've seen on some of the forums that I've been on, the Twitch and different places, is that the learning how to do the impromptu is important, but having a moderator, having somebody who can follow along while you're doing your piece and pay attention and give you some more awareness of, hey, I see this, while or even a prompt where I've gotten stuck, and I'm not sure, kind of forgot where I was. A quick prompt in the chat of, oh, okay, yeah, that somebody kind of backing you up, watching over and helping, and watching the audience and those visual cues that we've been talking about. A moderator, absolutely.
That's a great point. We have an 111-year-old congregant who shows up in person a lot, so shows up on Zoom a lot. But whenever we're in a Zoom service and I have a moment 10, 15 minutes in, I'll start flipping through the pages to see, is she there? Because we'll usually recognize her. But you're right. I shouldn't, it would be great if someone else in the room could be doing that and just flagging it. Yes, Ruth's there, or I noticed that Ruth's there. And also this, some way of communicating to us. Also, this person who lost their parent is on the Zoom, kind of letting us know which mourners are there without us having to flip through Zoom pages from the Bima. That would be another asset.
Absolutely. Yeah, I also think about monitoring the chat. There is no way to monitor the chat when you're leading prayer, but much less engage with the chat. But what if you had someone who, as you said, Michael, who's this is their job, right? They are monitoring the chat. They're looking for who's there. They're offering support. If people are having struggles they can't hear, they're available to help them with that. But then as they monitor the chat, they have, as you said, Tobias, a back channel to send you the important stuff, right? Something that they could, a way that you don't need to see every chat, but if every week they're able to throw 2 or 3 up to you that are particularly meaningful or particularly beautiful that you might want to share from the Bima, in addition to, names that you might want to share for in remembrance or anything like that. Yeah, what a powerful and important piece of that, Michael. Thank you. And also Tobias, taking as much weight off of the clergy or the leaders so that they can focus on that important stuff. I've spent a bunch of time trying to help people figure out how to simplify what they're doing. Get a 6-button Stream Deck and just have 6 buttons. That's right. Just simple. So if you need to switch cameras at all, keep it simple so that you can focus on that really important stuff. I wonder, are there other tech pieces to this puzzle, other tools or tricks that people can use to uh, to capture that engagement, to break down that proximity priority that we all struggle with. For me, it's the Stream Deck. It's an iPad often. Other pieces of tech or tools that people have used? Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I'll give you one more. Restream or something like it. And the reason why is because if you are streaming to YouTube, to Facebook, to Twitch, to multiple sources, and you want to have someone keep an eye on comments or see who's watching, Restream is able to bring them all in together. That's what I did before. I've got Restream open and I'm able to just kind of bring up that Restream chat, and it's grabbing comments. You can't really see it now, but it's grabbing comments from all of the different, everywhere we're streaming to. So I don't need to have Facebook and YouTube and this and that and the other thing open. I can just have that one. Again, simplify. For me, simplify. Any other tips or tools, tech or otherwise, that might be helpful to people as they're trying to navigate this?
Well, just to acknowledge that there's two kinds of if we're talking about Zoom, there's two kinds of monitors. There's the monitor that faces the clergy person, and then there's a monitor that the congregants can see, like a projection on the back wall or a big TV or what have you. And both are useful, and both can provide a different way to connect with the clergy and with the Zoom, in that when we explicitly bring the gallery view onto the projector, which we only do at certain points of the service, then even though we have the little iPad in front of us, and even though the camera's in front of us, we end up looking at the projection behind us, which is a little silly because the people are actually there, not there, but it actually connects us with the congregants who are experiencing the people as there. So that actually has a weird effectiveness to it, in that now we're going through the same experience as the congregants in person.
Tobias, do you do that via dual monitor mode in Zoom? So you've got your big screen is connected to your main computer, and you've got your main Zoom window on your computer so you can see the grid view, but then that's kind of the setup I have here, right? I've got my main Zoom window here, I'm looking at the grid, but then I've got my speaker view, as it were, I guess, over here on a second monitor.
Yeah, so some people might not know that on Zoom you can set up dual monitor mode, and you get two Zoom windows for your one meeting, which is what David just explained. We don't do that. We, if we're going to have an iPad monitor in front of us, we just log into that Zoom meeting and see it there. And for the projection that goes up on the wall behind us, that is another computer in the back of the room connected to the projectors, logged into its own Zoom meeting. Logged in as its own Zoom participant. And then we have we use OBS and some shortcuts to hotkeys to easily toggle between no image on the back wall, the gallery, the speaker view, or our prayer slides. But yeah, to make it easy and flexible, we set up just hotkeys to quickly go between those.
That's great. David, welcome. I hope you've stopped your car.
I stopped my car. I turned it off. I'm sitting here with the camera on. Thank you. I'm glad to connect on this.
Absolutely. Yeah, go.
I love the comments about the Zoomagogue, because I think that's so extraordinary and so 2021. This is a different world today. I have the fortune of doing worship chair and Zoom Goodbye on a low-tech version without really spending any money. So sometimes in the sanctuary, running multiple cameras off of a USB multi-hub thing, but not as fancy as a deck with buttons. So I'm actually just choosing the cameras and sometimes working it remotely. But to your point about having a maestro or a conductor or someone of a Zoom Gabai, it is critical as a lay leader to be able to take that off of the responsibility of my rabbinical partner so that I can help her or him, in whatever other case, to perform services and share information and insights that I see on a gallery panel, so that I bring everybody into the same holy worship that we have together.
David, thank you so much. I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit about what is it that you do other than pressing the buttons? What is it that you do to help the people who are participating via Zoom, who are davening via Zoom, to feel like they're part of the congregation?
So to that end, I keep gallery view open at all times. And by doing that, it allows me to be able to see who is speaking because it'll highlight it, but it allows me to see the entire group. Thank goodness, as a small congregation with a Zoom screen of 49 capable, I can see 30 people, 20 people, whatever it is. So I can see all the faces. I can see who's paying attention, who's got a thought, who's raising their hand, who's reacting in some way. So I can help my spiritual leader to be able to connect that family and connect our congregation together.
So David, just the way that you're talking about it shows that you have real self-kavod for the work you're doing and for how important it is for the clergy, for the congregation. And
so I was just trying to say kavod means respect. Sorry.
Oh,
I was just
trying
to say
100%. I know, I got you.
and when we think about the traditional synagogue roles of Gabbai, who is a role to ensure that certain rituals are performed accurately and that the texts are available, and also even the role of shamash, which is just kind of like utility man, utility person for the synagogue. Those are roles that have gotten their own titles in Hebrew because they're really important and respected roles. And so I think people started out thinking that having a role on Zoom is just helping us get by. It's just an extra thing, but the technological roles, they're going to become, if they already are, and they're going to become just fundamental roles to the maintenance and success of the community.
Thank you for that, Tobias.
And what David,
that's important.
And what David is doing again is more than just pressing those buttons. It's like large churches who have digital pastors. In some ways it's being a digital member of the clergy team. I'm
a co-worker with my rabbinical partner to help to make this to be the best experience for my congregants, in person or online.
We should all be blessed with someone who is ready to partner with us in that way. Because I know there are a lot of synagogues who are struggling to find people who not only will volunteer their time, but who really want to be a part of the creation process of these experiences. It can be a wholly beautiful moment and opportunity for those who want to take it. So lots of respect to you.
The fact that I'm technologically knowledgeable is great. And I appreciate when I go and visit another synagogue, as one of my neighbor ones about 5 miles away from me has this wonderful stream deck and lovely pan to zoom cameras on tripods and all wired up, and for $2,500, and he's there doing that stuff. It's like, yeah, I wish I had somebody that would donate $2,500 and make that work. But then that's just another thing for me to do on Friday night. So I'm just making it work.
Amazing. Tobias, go ahead.
Another hybrid role that maybe people have seen synagogues doing really well. I've thought about it, but we haven't coordinated yet. Is I would love a fleet of Zoom ushers who chat directly one-to-one with congregants at the beginning of the service or at the end, saying, "I haven't seen your name on the Zoom before. Is this your first time logging on to Temple Israel Zoom? And then where do you live? And do you think you might want this information? Come to this thing. Let's get a coffee." And I think that because right now we're just kind of passively accepting who's in the Zoom, and we start recognizing some people who come back. But just the same way that a great synagogue, when someone walks in, someone says hello and helps them form a connection. Oh, you're new to town. You work in law. Let me introduce you to a lawyer after this service. We should be doing that on Zoom and making sure that people that show up once feel
Yep.
individually welcomed and connected to people.
You know, I've had the honor of participating in some trainings with the digital clergy or the digital, I'm not sure if they're all clergy, but the digital team at Elevation Church. And I think I've mentioned here before that one of the things they've taught me is that 20% of what they do happens on Sunday mornings during services. 80% happens before and after services and during the week when they are following up with those people, chatting them, inviting them to watch parties, going out to coffee with them, finding someone who's local. You know, Elevation Church, they're all over the country, all over the world. So finding someone who's local to that watcher, because they got their information during the stream, and they're not doing Zoom. They're doing this over YouTube, over Facebook. They're using all these other social platforms. So yeah, Tobias, that having a group of people to do that is fantastic. Marty, I'm going to give you the last word, and then we're going to sign off because I know some of us have hard stops. Go for it.
David, you may remember early on during COVID when we first started doing these webcasts that we talked about doing tech for virtual service or online service is not a volunteer role, it's a ministry, right? It is a ministry because you are actually partnering with the worship team and you are playing a part that represents the synagogue to the congregation. You are that interactive piece between the synagogue and the congregation. And in order to do it successfully and fully engaged, there are a number of roles that are pretty important to fill. And Tobias mentioned one is a digital usher, welcoming people on the chat who are coming into the digital space. Having somebody who is controlling audio, have somebody who is switching cameras, have somebody who is monitoring the stream, who is watching the stream and part of the tech team, right? Because that's really important. If your stream's not up, like we had a little issue that, before starting this one, making sure that the stream is actually working and making sure that it looks good and it sounds good, or it looks and good as it expected. It's a team of people, and every team member is important. Every team member is a part of the ministry.
I love thinking of it as a ministry. We don't really have that concept, I think, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, Tobias, but I just love that. I also just want to mention that Mark, who's been watching with us, asks, how do you recommend building engagement in one-way live stream? Our lay leaders have moved us away from Zoom, so we now have no feedback from the streamers. First of all, thank you for the question. It is more difficult, I think, in YouTube and Facebook. You still do have feedback. There are comments on YouTube and Facebook. And if you are streaming to both of those simultaneously through a service like StreamSpot or Restream, again, you can aggregate all those comments in one place. If you have the setup for it, you can do, this is not complicated, to be able to grab comments, to be able to throw them on screen. I have to find my Restream one day, and to be able to bring them up on your stream so that people can see them. I will say that when I watch a lot of live streams on YouTube, and if I comment, I stick around to see if they're going to bring my comment up on screen and say hi to me and give me a shout out. That's an incentive for me to stay. And that's how they get feedback from me. And incidentally, it's not a very Jewish thing to do this on Shabbat, but built into some of these streaming platforms is also super chats and ways for you to do donations and fundraising in the midst of your live stream. So if you're doing a class or something and you want to invite people to contribute toward it, you can even use that. I'm aware of the time, and I know that some of us had a hard stop. I'm so grateful to all of you, to Michael, to Marty, to Tobias, to David for joining us, and Christo and Mark for watching and really being a part of it. this is, I think that the technology will continue. Oh God, he's driving again. The technology will, the technology will continue getting better, hopefully, so we can do a better job of this. And hopefully we will improve our, what was the word? Marty, what was the word? Our,
Proximity.
no.
Nope.
The thing that we need to do better. Oh, I just lost it. Whose line is it anyway? What do they do?
Improvisation.
Thank you. We'll improve our improvisation. We will improve our improvisation. That was so perfect that I couldn't improvise that. That was so perfect. So we have a lot of time and a lot of work to do, but a lot of time to get better at it. So thank you, everyone. We'll be back in 2 weeks. But Marty, you've got a show next Thursday, yes?
Yes.
Beautiful.
We have a show on next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are going to go over Stream Deck and Companion, ways to automate your processes, perform multiple steps, do this, do that, do everything else, do 3 or 4 things all with the push of a single button.
I'm a huge Stream Deck fan. I've been scared of Companion though. I'm terrified of it. So I'm going to watch. That's going to be fantastic. All right. Everyone have the most lovely day. We'll see you next time. Bye everyone.
Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.